It is uber competitive to get listings in most markets. So let's talk about how to win those listings if you're going to be in a competitive environment. I know lots of people watching and that may watch this in the future. They wish, wait, and hope. They have a large sphere of influence. They get a call, a come list me call, and it's great. But then all of us occasionally get that call that says, yeah, so-and-so recommended you, and I want you to be one of 3 agents that I'm interviewing. And I know I've got some agents, at least at RE/MAX Allegiance, that when they hear that, they turn white as a ghost, right? Because if they don't have a listing presentation, right, they can't just walk in and wing it, and it creates angst. Always good to see you. Happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend.
Yes, I hope you did. I got the impression you're traveling.
I am back in DC for a number of weeks. Some stuff that I need to take care of up here. So it's leaving one hot spot and from Florida back to here where things are a little bit more under control. So it's good to be back in the district for a couple months. We've got some really good topics this week. Today we're going to be talking about how to win listings and what the steps are in that process. Wednesday, for those that have not been paying attention, is tax day, or it may be extension day for you. So if you've not been paying attention, you need to be doing something with the IRS no later than Wednesday, the 15th of July. In celebration of that, we're going to be discussing expenses and income tracking in QuickBooks. A cheap and easy system. So we're going to take some screenshots of that, go over that for those that are struggling to track income and expenses. And then Friday of this week, we're going to begin a deep dive into listing presentations that we expect is going to take us into next week. So that's a preview of what's coming up over the next week. Today, however, how to win listings. Eyerusalem was just telling us that only 4% of listings nationwide recently are getting a price cut. Homes are selling faster when compared to a year ago. In many markets, once that listing agreement is signed, unless something terrible goes awry, it's almost like a paycheck, right? You're almost signing your paycheck when you're signing that listing agreement. So it is uber competitive to get listings in most markets. So let's talk about how to win those listings if you're going to be in a competitive environment. I know lots of people watching and that may watch this in the future. They wish, wait, and hope. They have a large sphere of influence. They get a call, a come list me call, and it's great. But then all of us occasionally get that call that says, yeah, so-and-so recommended you, and I want you to be one of 3 agents that I'm interviewing. And I know I've got some agents, at least at RE/MAX Allegiance, that when they hear that, they turn white as a ghost, right? Because if they don't have a listing presentation, right, they can't just walk in and wing it, and it creates angst. I've known some agents to actually decline those opportunities because they're so unprepared, if you can believe it. So anyway, let's dive into how to win listings in a competitive market. What are the steps in that process? Where do you want to start?
Well, I want to start with kind of poking holes and limiting beliefs. That is that if my past client calls me, I don't really have to try hard, or it's going to sell in less than a week anyway. I really don't have to do this. I really don't have to do that. And the other thing is, yeah, that's all very well and good for you, but that sounds hard. So we're going to talk about a really thorough listing process, what it entails, and how important it is that you absolutely invest in a quality service model, because you are predicting the future of your business by having strong service. So whether you're competing or not, whether the home is likely to sell in 3 days or not, I strongly recommend that you establish a really thorough, detailed listing process that shows off the quality of your service. It will create less stress for your seller, and it will generate more leads, more engagement from any listings that you take.
Yeah, so I mean, part of this is, what is your listing standard?
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to list just this amazing condominium recently, 800 square foot outdoor terrace looking over an historic neighborhood of DC. You can see for miles from this terrace, right? There's nothing in the way. So, and there are literally people that were waiting for units on this floor in this particular building to come on the market.
Yeah.
So I could have just put it in the MLS.
Of course.
Had professional photos done, but that's not my standard. My standard is Matterport for everything. I think you and I have talked about this before. It could be a 700 square foot shoebox and they're getting Matterport. That's just the way I do it. And then anything over $1 million, we're also doing video. So I had the photographer there, I had the 3D Matterport guy there, and then I had the videographer there too. And we did the floor plan, you know, from Matterport. And the point was that was my standard. There was no question about it. And then, you know, I've got another one coming up that's a row home that I think is going to be more challenging to sell. And the sellers were like, so talk to us about your marketing. And I said, over $1 million. This is what I do every single time. This is going to be the same marketing that I did for you last time I sold a house for you. And they were happy. So, you know, there's no cutting corners because it's a good market, right? And assuming that it's going to sell in 3 days, so I don't need to do this and that, which I think is what you were alluding to a minute ago. So I think setting your standard, and I'm not saying that your standard has to be Matterport 3D, although it probably should, and especially with COVID. And I'm not saying that your standard has to be video, but what is your standard, right? Instead of having to decide based on a property what you're willing to do. And,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think this is going to dovetail nicely with our discussion of expenses on Wednesday, because here's something else I want you to keep in mind. Listing leverage could be one of the strongest pillars in your business. Listing leverage, major sources of business that generates a lot of business for you every year. So that does require a standard. And then when you look at, gosh, it's only a $500,000 house. Should I put some money into marketing? Yes. This is your pillar, right? The money is partly for the seller and it's partly for you. And I'm not saying be disingenuous. I'm not saying take advantage of your seller and do things that won't benefit them. But when you go above and beyond to make sure that every possible set of eyeballs sees this property and that those competing offers are as strong as possible, yes, you could, in some markets, you could sell a home with a sign on a fence.
Yep.
Does that mean they will get top dollar, right? That you will price at the top of any recently sold comps and get 20 more?
Right.
No, not necessarily, right? Not without fresh carpet, not without gorgeous photos. So I think following your process, it establishes a professional standard, right? And then this is your proof of work, right? This is your portfolio. And I've said that before to people who are like, I don't know if it deserves the video. And I'll say, that video is for you, baby, right? You get to show that next time you're
Exactly. It's nice to have a grand portfolio to show future sellers. This is all the stuff, not this is what I'll do for you. And I don't have an example, right? I have lots of videos. I have lots of Matterports, right? I have lots of floor plans and I have lots of really cool photos.
I will tell you, I have several coaching clients who have leaned hard on video in every possible way in business for their listings primarily, but in every way. And they have not been very good at following up with their sphere. They're not doing the hi, how you been? They're not popping by with an herb in the spring. Like, they have not done the faithful sphere of influence nurture that we've talked about. However, their proof of service, suddenly the phone is blowing up. People are calling to say, I want so-and-so to work with you. I referred you to my mom. I've seen how great the work is that you do. So they knew them already, right? These are the people who know, like, and trust them. But now they trust them even more because they've seen the quality of their work. So I think when we talk about listing process, I want to encourage you to follow routines. And we can actually outline every single element of what we're talking about, the strong listing process. Right now, we're just talking about marketing. And I want you to keep in mind two ways of trying. This is why I say we're dovetailing with expenses. Keep in mind a cost of sale. So I go in to take a listing. It's an $8,000 listing. Maybe I have a budget in mind for such listings. I never spend more than X on staging, photography, video, whatever that might be. You come up with your cost of sale that you're comfortable with. I would encourage you to not overthink the amount you spend on a listing, because part of that money is part of your bigger picture marketing budget.
Right.
And we talk about 10% of all money you earn being appropriate to be spent on marketing. Where are you going to spend that money otherwise, right? So if you're going to make $500,000 in a year, you can have $50,000 a year to marketing. Giving it to Zillow, throwing big parties, what are you doing, right? So I want to encourage you to be generous with the way you market listings for yourself and for your seller. It will bolster your reputation and generate online leads as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was talking to a coaching client last week about the importance of having listings, right? If you have listings, you're going to have customers. It's like if you walk by Pottery Barn in the mall and there's no furniture, right? And the sales associates are in there and they wonder why no one's in the store. There's no sofas. There's no buffets. There's no lamps. That's an agent without listings. If you have listings, if Pottery Barn has inventory, Pottery Barn has customers. If you as an agent have listings, you're going to have people coming to your store, right? So anyway, where do you want to start with? Okay, so personal standard, what's your cost of sale? Spending 10% of what we earn on marketing.
Big picture, right?
Big picture stuff. What's next today in this process?
Start with the beginning, because today we're talking about winning the listing, right?
Yes.
So I've had this happen a couple of times lately where, yes, it was a referral. Yes, it was someone I know, but I was also competing. And I failed the first time. This is recent. Our state had very, very strong guidelines with regard to COVID, and I will not violate them.
Yeah.
I won't. So the woman came to my door, actually. She's in my neighborhood. She was not wearing a mask. She was standing closer than 6 feet from me. I don't want to be rude, but so I told her, this is how we do this. And when I showed up at their house in mask and gloves, I think they were a little put off. And I told them that I had all this wonderful marketing to show them. I was the third agent. They were kind of over it by then. They didn't really want to participate in the Zoom meeting. I should have done it differently, and I did the next time. I turned my pre-listing presentation into a flip book, and I sent it via BombBomb with a video to the people long before our Zoom meeting. So the first touch was that pre-listing communication, and I'd be happy to share the screen and show you the flip book. But it had a little bit of wow factor. Then we did the Zoom meeting, and I was able to walk them through the comps and really talk about, what do you want to do? What do you know your property needs? And then schedule a time to come over. So by the time I showed up at the house in mask and gloves, we had a lot of rapport built, and we had a lot of professionalism established. There was a lot of service already being offered, and they were happy with me, and they chose me. So I think winning now, you really need a virtual listing plan in place. You need to implement it right away. The minute you have the opportunity, you need to be sending the video, you need to be sending the links, you need to be educating them before you ever interface with them on Zoom or in person about what you're going to do to earn their business.
Good. So a quick plug, the RE/MAX Allegiance pre-listing book comes in an electronic format, right? So you're able to send that out if you're meeting with somebody virtually. If you're going to be meeting with them in person, you can still send the physical book out, by the way, right? So I will always be an advocate of sending out that physical book, because when's the last time you got a book in the mail, right? That said, what about the questions that you ask a seller? Because I think this is so important. The questions that you ask a seller before you actually meet with that seller around motivation, around what price are you all looking for, around, hey, what's your plan B if this doesn't sell? I realize that's unlikely in this market, but is there a plan B? Or, oh, hell no, I'm moving to Florida in 2 months, right? Job transfer, this thing is going to sell, right? That's, it's good to know some of that stuff. So why don't you talk a little bit about those preliminary questions, if you will?
So absolutely, those are the elements of the big picture process. Always follow the seller questionnaire, and we do have a copy of that on the Allegiance Way. So don't forget to ask the basics, right? To find out that there's someone else on title who wasn't a part of the decision making, and now there's no chance because they didn't hear your pitch. Right. So follow all the things that, Charlie, that you talked about. I love the what's your plan B question. I wouldn't say if it doesn't sell, because I think that's confusing. I would just say what's your plan B, and they might go, what? There's no plan B. Right. That helps, right? But in different markets, sometimes people are just testing the waters, or there's lots of reasons that they've called you. So absolutely follow a detailed seller questionnaire, then send them your pre-listing communication. I have a friend who also then sends a Google form that is more of a inventory of the house kind of a thing.
Okay.
recently did you service your furnace? What sorts of things need to be improved in your home? And all of that happens before the actual appointment. And in the appointment, so we're up to step 4, in the appointment, you go over the comps. And for most of us, you've got to look at the stats and the market trends bigger picture also, because those few comps may or may not tell the whole story. I think most of us are seeing that you could pull up the comps and the highest, most recent sale, even if it's a super similar property, is under what they're probably going to get.
Right.
So you have to do a little bit of predictive pricing, but to show them the trends, show them days on market, show them list to sell ratio, are people getting closing costs, things like that. Have that conversation, and then show them the marketing plan and talk about the home improvement plan. After that, you need to send them their seller homework, and then have detailed steps for tracking under contracts. Well, I skipped a step. Most of us need a spreadsheet for analyzing competing offers. If you're going to get 10 offers, don't just like spread them all out and have a wait, that one had the clause, wait.
Right.
So you really need to do the best that you can to help yourself and your client evaluate their options, then have an under contract checklist and a post closing follow-up plan. So I would say those are the elements, and then don't have them in your head. Have them in Google Drive, have them in Asana, have them someplace, have them in Trello, so that you can be providing consistent service every time.
Good. So where does staging come in, your concierge service? We have been talking for the better part of a year now about getting away from, well, I've got a guy for that, to, oh, I have a concierge service. This is what I offer, right? And kind of like what you were describing at the top of the show, when it comes to how much do you want to spend on marketing, don't be cheap. How much do you want to spend on concierge? If anything, right? So we have some people, depending on the list price, some agents cover the staging. Some agents don't. Some agents cover the consultation, right? But not the actual furniture. We have some agents that will front money for repairs prior to closing. We have others that won't. We have some that have contractors that won't bill until closing. So these are all things to be thinking about now, instead of when you walk into the house and you're like, this needs paint and carpet, right? And then you find out that they don't have any money. So what is the plan B? Have you asked your contractor?
Right.
Hey, I give you tons of business. On some occasions, will you take payment at closing? Right? That does not mean that the agent is getting in between the deal between the seller and the contractor. I want to be very clear about that, right? The contract is still between seller, contractor. We just had somebody, Steve Flasterer, who is an agent out of DC, said, do you suggest splitting staging? I think we've all done that. I think we've all paid for it. I think we've all, in some cases, had the client pay for it. I think a lot of it depends on the circumstances, how much staging is needed, what the commission is going to be. I don't know that it's one size fits all. I would just challenge everybody to be thinking about these scenarios ahead of time.
But I can
have a plan.
I can give some examples.
Good.
And I agree with you, Charlie, that we do take it case by case, but I think having a staging standard is hugely helpful.
Yes.
So saying I always do X and sometimes I do Y, even to yourself, helps. So Steve, what I pay for a staging consultation every single time. Every once in a while, I've had someone absolutely refuse, and those are kind of difficult clients who refuse to allow anything about their property to be changed prior to photography. I've had people refuse the recommendations of the stager. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, in my case, it's a very detailed 2-hour visit.
Okay.
Professional stager. She takes a very detailed inventory, and then she gives them a massive amount of homework. It includes things she thinks they need to improve, things that need to change. I actually don't normally tag along. She does the heavy lifting for me.
Right.
I'm in the listing presentation and they're saying, Amy, do you think, should we get rid of this? And what do you think about that? And I have made the mistake before of being honest and really having it backfire, having them upset at me that I said something unkind. And so
telling somebody to take down the shrine of their favorite son can be a very sensitive subject, and having that come from a third party, I think, is just money, right? It's just totally worth it.
It's totally worth it. And so what I say now, and I try to not sound disingenuous, I'm as honest as I feel is appropriate in the moment, but I usually say something like, that is an excellent question. And you know what, honestly, there's a reason I hire a professional. She's going to come in here and she's going to give us all the big picture recommendations. And then we can take her recommendations and talk about whether or not we're in alignment with everything she thinks is appropriate. Because I've had my stager recommend a really big paint job that my client refused to do, and we lived with it. So so that's how I pitch that, Steve. And that is my absolute standard no matter what. Now, I've had other situations where I have paid for a lot of my stager's time and they have paid for furniture rental. I paid like $900 for her time just to get the furniture arranged. And they paid for 2 months of furniture rental, which was about $700. And I strongly recommended it. I said, I think, guys, there's no question that this is going to benefit you. I had one recently where I had a friend who just is really good at staging. She had a ton of furniture she was getting ready to sell. And I asked her to look at my listing. She said, no problem, I'll do this. It was $1,000 total. This woman brought her own things in and then left them there for 2 months, and we split it between us, $500 each, except for the fact that my client hated it so bad she cried. It was actually really economical and it looked great. But my client was very analytical and she really hated having her house made cute.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. But so Steve, those are some of the standards. I have a friend who used to do all the staging herself. And by the way, as a coach, I strongly recommend that you not be your own photographer, that you not be your own stager. You think you're an expert, you think you're excellent. I say, if you're that ding dang good, then go run a business doing that. Because when you divide your attention with multiple specialties, it really does bog you down. It makes it hard. It
takes away from your primary business, right?
It absolutely does. Sure. So she finally wised up and transitioned so that someone she knows now runs that very structured staging business. And this is the model. Every single listing she takes is required to pay the $2,500 to her stager. It's a part of what she requires, and you'll do it or she won't list your house. And it's fascinating to me, and she makes that work. And it involves bringing cool things in and really making every property look ready for a magazine cover.
Right. Good. Okay. Something else to add around staging. In my standard, I will not list a vacant house without staging. Because I just think it looks terrible. And I think that buyers do a terrible job of visualizing their own stuff in a house. You may think that the house looks big or empty, but we all know it actually doesn't. It looks smaller. And I think listing an empty shoebox is just a terrible idea, right? So, I mean, work it out. At least stage the main rooms. You don't have to stage the third bedroom, perhaps, but at least the master bedroom, the living room, and whatnot.
So as long as we're going deep on staging, I have one other recommendation.
I
got this from one of my clients this week. She said she does virtual staging, and it's actually not allowed in her MLS. So here's how she uses virtual staging when appropriate. She pays for the virtual staging so that in the photos, the property looks furnished and it looks perfect and it looks beautiful. And then she has them printed on these huge posters and puts them around the property. So when people come and view the property, they see it as it is, clean and empty. But then they see the photos of what it looks like furnished. She said it has tremendous effect.
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
Economical. It doesn't attract online because the MLS does not allow virtual staging. But I thought that was also a great tip.
Interesting. I have seen some MLSs. There's two photos, right? You have the photo of the empty living room, and then the next photo is the one that's been virtual staged, which is clearly an MLS rule, right? Or people wouldn't be doing that. Any last minute comments to wrap up today? I know we're running a little bit over.
So please go to theallegianceway.com and take advantage of the listing resources we have. Create a master listing process. Start to practice following it. Charlie, the thing that I am noticing about the people that I coach is everyone is hoping that they could just find out what that super successful agent is doing. Could you tell me real quick? Just real quick. Nothing is that quick. Building a business and building your skill takes time, so please be patient with yourself. Promise to get better over time. Commit. I spent so many hours on Saturday looking at a new system, and I just really went deep. It took my whole Saturday. I could have been hiking. I could have been gardening with my daughter, which maybe sounds like I made the wrong choice. But I won't do it every Saturday, but I really committed and I got so much out of it. So commit to growing your skill, commit to growing your process and service, and know that a year from now, you'll be a way better professional. So don't just try one little thing and say they're wrong, that didn't work. Really, really commit to practice.
I like it. progress, not perfection.
Absolutely.
As we say, these things take time. Always good to see you. We will see you back here Monday morning.